Hello there. Well, it's Fiona from Weekly Sewing Bee. Hi. Today I'm going to do waistcoats. Now I'm going to be doing 3 of these. This is the, I'm going to say easy sew, but I'm going to actually say it's the straight stitch only sew, okay? So you could do this on a really old machine, an old handle one. I'm going to do it on a normal one, but yeah, that's what we can do. Anyway, we're going to make waistcoats. Whee! Love waistcoats. I know. And we are going to make it without any lining or anything. And yeah, it's going to be great. So we know what a waistcoat looks like. At least I hope you do. And we're going to use this sort of suede-ette. Now this sort of style works very well with a good fabric like denim or corduroy. Corduroy would work very well. But we're going to use suede-ette because that's what we have. Now one thing I will say is that we do have to watch the length of the waistcoat, because whereas we see them that they only come down halfway, we do have to actually take in the fact that there's outward as well. Yeah, so do take a second just to measure. Now I'm using this t-shirt just as a guide for the armholes. Now I know it has to be done, we have to get the armholes right. And because we're going to hem this fabric as well, we're going to need them slightly bigger than a t-shirt. So let's just go up there. Now this line that I've cut is the front panel, so I've done a V. And I'm going to just take my armhole slightly lower, and then I'm going to join this up here. So the front panels, 2 of your corduroy denim hard wearing panels, and then we are going to do the back panel with lining. Now I presume that this piece of fabric was square, but I was mistaken, so let me just realign that up so that they sort of match. There we go. And how much do I need to take off there? Just a wee bit. So there we go. We've got our basic shape. We've made sure that our armholes are correct armhole type thing. And we have made our fronts. So what we're also going to make is 2 pockets. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you how to make pockets, and I'm going to tell you how to just to sew on the fake pockets if we don't want to go that far. So you know, it's really up to you. I'm going to do both because yeah, some people might go, oh, no. But there's nothing to be scared of. We'll be doing it step by step. So all I've done there is I've cut out 2 squares. Now I've made sure that my grain is slightly different. This is just so they'll stand out, okay? I'll put them to the side. Next job is I need to do the back panel. So let me just fold this. I'm going to do it in 2 halves. So this is folded over. I'm going to use this as a boop, 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 boop. I suppose I'm going to use this as a guide, definitely, because I need the shoulder to join up and I need the armholes to join up. But the neckline is slightly different, so I can either go back to my t-shirt and copy the neckline from here, or we can just guess it, because it's quite simple. We just need it to go like that, really. So I do need the others to be the same though, the front and the back, because otherwise it'll be very difficult to sew it up and we won't get that correct. So now the other thing that I'm going to do is, oh, I'm feeling very left-handed again, aren't I? I do this every now and again. I can't decide whether I'm left-handed or right-handed. I'm going to make the straps that go at the back of a waistcoat. Now, if you've seen a waistcoat, you'll know that there are, it's like a little taggy thing. I'm not going to sew one of those in, but I'm going to sew the straps in, just because it's part of the decoration and I want it to look like a waistcoat. So, the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to take 2 strips of the lining and I am going to sew them and fold them over. So, lovely. Just the last line here. Not perfectly cut, but we will succeed. I'm just going to line that up again. So we now have our 3 pieces of fabric plus our pocket, and all we need now is a strip of fabric for the straps at the back. Now, if you can get hold of the buckle, brilliant. If you can't, then don't worry too much. It will look just as good without the buckle, trust me. Okay, so also I need to cut out is 4 squares of the lining for the pockets inside. So, okay, fold this over right side to right side. Now, fabrics that have just a small degree of difference in the sheen really do bug me because I have trouble with it. But as long as you stick with one side, we should be fine. Now all I'm doing is a straight line stitch over the loose ends of this fold. I'm going to leave myself an inch at the end, and this is so that I can start the turning inside out. Now I always work on the theory that sew the bits, you know, the little bits, and then we can sew the big bits together. So the bit that I haven't sewn, I've started the fold, and I'm going to use a knitting needle or a pen just to assist it, but it should pop through quite easily. Now, if this is your first time sewing lining, then you are now sewing one of the most difficult fabrics that there are. So if you've successfully done that, then well done, because anyone will tell you that it's difficult. It's not difficult at all. Now you may have noticed that I haven't adjusted my stitch length. I'm sewing very thin fabric just then, and now I'm sewing thick fabric. So what the machine is doing is it's making small stitches on this thick fabric and longer stitches on the thin fabric. So rather than panic, I'm okay, Jack. So what I'm doing now is I'm just sewing over the pocket flaps. Now I do recommend that even if you don't put the pockets in, you sew the pocket flaps on, because I just think it looks so much better. Now I've gone most of the way around this rectangle square, and I've left an opening here on the cut edge. This is so I can turn it inside out, but rather than leave one whole edge open, I've just left a hole. Now the reason for that is that I'm not going to do the corners, I can do them later, is that this raw edge hole here, I can just push my fingers in and I can pull it tight, and then it can seal quite easily, and then I can sew along there so it's sewn. Okay, so that's those done. Obviously we need to do both, but you know, you can trust me. Alright, so I have my lining here for my back. Now before I do anything else, I am going to sew the armholes. It's just going to give such a nicer finish. Now obviously if I tried to fold this over all the way along, even with 1,000 pins, I'd still be difficult. It really would be difficult. So what I've done is I've sewn an inch. I'm going to then take the next couple of inches and get them ready to sew. I'm going to hold it and then I'm going to sew. Now the reason I believe that people don't like sewing lining or have trouble with lining is that it moves around so much. So what we're doing is we're not giving it the opportunity to move around. All I'm trying to do is sew a small amount and I'm holding it quite firmly with my finger. Now I'm going to do the other armhole in a moment, but I am going to take one of the fronts and from the wrong side, so I'm then going to fold this over and I'm going to do exactly the same. Now even though this fabric doesn't fray, corduroys and denim would, I'm still going to double fold it. Now the reason I'm doing that is because it's going to give the garment structure. Now it is quite a tough fabric. It's got dense weave. This machine isn't struggling too much, although it is making a hell of a racket. The thing to do, if you're concerned, then you can put a little drop of oil in the machine and then see if that helps. You can also make sure that you've got a sharp needle. Now there is such a thing on the market as a denim needle. Now I choose not to use them. If my machine is going to break, I want it to break at the weakest part, and the weakest part is the needle. And the needle, very easy to change, so I'm not going to worry at all. Okay, I'm not going to do the rest of the hemming now because I don't really need to, but to get this armhole as neat as possible, I do need to do that first. So what I've got here is I've got my two fabrics with the right side out, so the hem's on the inside, yeah? What I'm now going to do is I'm going to line it up so that it's got a good half an inch, quarter of an inch, 3/4 of an inch showing of the outside. Now we have two choices how we're going to attach these two bits together. The way I'm showing you now, this is like we would have on a pair of jeans on the side seam. Now it's going to lie nice and flat. It's just going to look very nice. So I'm just going to touch those ends off. I'm now going to lie the two fabrics flat and I'm going to fold over the loose edge of the denim. Now this lining won't give much support, but if I was doing denim to denim, then this lining here would give me a nice guideline to fold that quite easily. Now again, all I'm doing is I've placed the first inch in the machine. I can do a couple of stitches just to get it happy. And now I'm going to sew another couple of inches. I need to make sure that this is flat, so with a sort of sweeping movement. Come on machine, you can do it. So my machine is there sewing over the two folded edges of the hem and then the two folded edges of this. So it's got a few layers to do. Obviously I can coax it by hand or I can just ignore it. So there we go. Because we've got nice durable fabrics, then that stitches was quite easy once it got started. And now what we have is a beautiful parallel line and it's nice and firm. Now I'm just going to literally grab a scrap of cloth here. Now if you're not happy with doing that, the cheat is to do a French seam. So we've got two fabrics, I've both got the right side up. I'm going to sew along there and then I am going to fold it over, so now I've got the wrong side showing and the wrong side showing. I'm going to place it under the machine. I'm just going to tidy up the other end. I'm only worrying about the first inch when I put something under the machine, and then I'm going to sew again. So, with luck, what we'll have is a neat edge from the right side to the right side, but we will have this lumpy bit, so it won't be as perfect. Okay, now I'm just going to do that again on the side seam, just because I'm a strong believer in cementing learning. So I have right side up, right side out, so my two seams are just on the inside. Now I'm going to line up my fabric that I want to turn over so that I've got that showing. I am actually ignoring the bottom here and more worried about keeping these seams level. So I managed to stop the machine with the needle down, which doesn't really help, and I'm going to line up the joining seams. So let's put it under the machine, and again only worry about this first inch. And then we're going to worry about the next couple of inches. So that's that. Okay? Scary noise when it goes over the seam. That's fine. No. Now I'm going to lay this nice and flat again. Now one of the technical terms that you will hear used is I'm going to give it a shake. Now this just means that I'm going to sort of get it as flat as possible, and I'm going to make sure that nothing is caught under, because quite often when we're sewing, and it happens to everybody, we kind of get the other bit caught up. So again, I'm only going to sew the first couple of inches, and then I'm going to adjust to sew the next couple of inches. Okay, so that's that done. And yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch off the camera, and I'm going to do all the other halves of what I've done so far. I'm not going to do anything else, but I'm going to get the other halves done. Hi, so welcome back. We are now pretty much have got a waistcoat, except that it needs hemming. Oh, I know. So what I'm going to do is literally, it's all one strip. Perhaps I should start, yeah. Okay, so I got it wrong side up. I'm going to check that my seams meet. That shouldn't be there. And we have no obvious exciting bits. So all I need to do now is fold once, fold twice, and again what I'm doing is I'm stitching 4 inches, then I'm realigning. Made myself jump then. So yeah, you know, we could spend an hour pinning it. It would be boring. I'm not very good with the pins either. So I'm literally one continuous line here, right round the outside. You know, if I was on my own, I would do it all in one go, but I'm just going to show you that we can literally go off the suede and then we can go on the lines. so, you know, not too exciting. As long as we don't try and get ahead of ourselves, and as long as we remember that the lining is slippery. So, yeah, okay, that's all I'm doing. It's quite boring, So here we are. Let's get rid of that. Alright, the hardest thing that I had to do was turn this inside out. Because what I'd managed to do was I'd managed to get the inside going up rather than one side coming down. I'm just going to chop it in half and get my sewing machine. Now it's really up to you. I must admit, I think that I'm just pushing the ends in because I'm going to hem it. So I've tucked in my little ends there. I'm going to place it under the machine and I'm going to sew. Now, when I said earlier about you've got to give your machine enough room to sew because it can literally suck the whole of the lining in, this is just what's happened. The lining's gone inside the machine rather than I've sewn the machine. So I'm going to take the bobbin out and I'm going to ease up my needle. Take off the foot if I can see, and if it really is a pain then I'm going to pop the clips that hold the bobbin holder in and give it another go. But I don't know if you can actually see, it's just sort of sucked it around, and it does that quite a lot. So take the bobbin casing out and then hopefully I'll be able to get my needle up, I can pull it out and then I can put the machine back together. So yes, it does do it, be warned. To put the bobbin case back in, put your starter at the top. It's a good idea just to switch the motor, unplug it, because it can sort of catch you, and then we just have to squeeze that back in there. And then put the bracket on to hold it, and away we go. So, yes, I know. Well, I'm glad you've seen that, even though it was a bit boring. It's just one of those things that happens, so I know. You know, when something like that happens, don't panic, and maybe it's time to take a break if you're making silly mistakes. So I've pushed everything home. I'm just going to clip my foot back on. Of course there is a chance that you damage your fabric when you do that, so you know, be warned that it's not a good thing. But make sure that you sew your lining so that it can grip on the feet. Now luckily, because this is just a thingy, I can trim it off. And then I'm going to pop my ends in again. And this time, when I place it under the foot, I'm going to give myself enough sewing room so that all my teeth are covered. Now, I think it would look nice if I sew all the way around it, rather than just hem the end. It's really up to you, and yeah. And then when it's done, what I'm going to do, just tidy off those ends so that we can see. I haven't sewn up this end. I'm going to fold this in half so that I can find the middle. And then I am going to leave it to one side and literally slide all this under, making sure my sewing surface is flat. Have another little look, because I just want it off the centre, and then I'm going to place the other one off the centre as well. So just a couple of stitches. Okay, so that's that. Okay, and then again, yes, we can always give our lovely sewing machine a new needle if it's not sharp, and a new bit of oil. TLC generally. Okay, now I thoroughly recommend that if you're not happy to sew pockets, you sew a dummy pocket. Now I have this here turned inside out, and these are the raw edges, the holes that we turned it inside out, and you can see that it naturally pops home. All I'm going to do is I'm going to place it in the appropriate place, and I'm going to run over with the sewing machine. What I'm doing is I'm sewing it to the fabric, but I'm also sealing it now. So that's done. So, and it is the details that make it worthwhile. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew a pocket on exactly the same place as that on the other side. So if I was sewing two pockets, what I would do is I would line them up and I would cut them at the same time. So now I'm just lining it up by eye. I'm going to place my pocket there. So what I need to do is I'm pinching it so that I've got this folded over. I can then check that it's straight. My pocket is this long. I'm going to fold this in half. I'm going to place that somewhere so I can see it, and then I'm going to cut a hole. I know, really hard to cut fabric, isn't it? Emotionally it's really hard. Okay, so I'm now going to lay that flat again. I have a pair of sharp scissors, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a V at the end of it. Now this is so what I can then do is if I push my fingers through, I've got a place, I've got like a letterbox hole, if that makes sense. You see that okay? So I can then sew the pocket to that quite easily. Now I've cut out my squares for my pocket, and you really do need them. You can't sew it like that. You can't sew your pocket first. What you need is a square. I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine. I have it so that I can see the pink through the black. Yeah? I lift it up again, and I'm going to sew across the line where those two V's would meet. So I'm going to pull the fabric away so that it's not caught up. So while the camera's been switched off, I've done all the hemming. Now because we've done these nice parallel stitches at the top and at the side, it might be nice that we did parallel stitches down the hem, but I haven't done that just because you can't really see it at all. But yeah, then again, the difference between making it for a present and making it for myself. So I'm all up to date. Now we've sewn the bottom line of the pocket. Tuck that in there out the way, or just generally get rid of it. So we're going to fold the garment in half, and now we have this flap. Yeah, so we have this, the two V's at the end, and now we've popped that out. So what we need to do put that under there so it stays there, is we need to sew this along there. Now, if you're lucky and if you're clever, you can do it so that you can lie your lining and you can still see a strip of that black. And then straightforward stitches. Oh, don't you love sewing machines? I just take offence. So, just quickly thread this. What we've got to make sure is that we catch both bits of fabric and we don't catch anything else. So, nice and simple. I might just go over the beginning again because that wasn't sewing because it wasn't threaded. Alright. Just ignore me. Here we go. So now what we've got from the right side is these two pockets, and that will tuck in there. Now what we need to do, so that we don't have these nice naked edges that we don't like, is we've got them both out, and I'm now going to sew the pocket on the outside, but I want the pocket to lie flat. So I've got the garment flat, I've got the pocket pointed down, I'm swishing it with my underhand. Now I'm making sure that I've got both these lined up and that I haven't got anything untoward caught. So there we go, pull that straight and then straight down. Now one of the things with waistcoats, and we should have really checked this before we started sewing, is that there's not a lot of cloth here. I can show you on this one. So we don't want it any longer because we don't want to see it from the back. This is the flap. So we're not going to sew all the way down. I suppose technically it just needs to be big enough for your pocket watch. Alright, let's get rid of that thread, it's annoying. Okay, and now I'm going up and I'm going to meet the top. Lovely, I'm going to stop when I get to the top. I'm now going to not knock anything on the floor. I'm going to take very sharp scissors and I'm going to cut as close to those stitches as I'm happy with, because we can't really have naked edges sticking out, can we? It's just going to fray and sooner or later you're going to end up with a hole in your pocket. So we might as well take the time just to do that. Now I'm going to pop it inside out. All I'm doing is rubbing the cloth just to get the corners out. You can use a pencil or something, and then I'm just sealing the majority of those stitches in. Now there's no way, well there is ways that I can get the top seam sewn, but I'm more worried about the pocket wearing through than I am worried about it fraying up here. So I know. Lovely. So this is what it looks like from the outside, but what it feels like from the inside is just a normal pocket. So, and that's good. Okay, so I'm now the right way round again. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the garment under the machine, and I am going to line up, so I've got all my scraggly bits in, so I've got the scraggly bits of the corner and everything, and I'm going to take the square that I sewed earlier. I'm going to make sure that this is the loose thread, that the hole where we turned it inside out, and place it so that that's in. Now through my scraggy bits I am going to sew them in and sew this on and seal this in at the same time in one fluid motion. Now if you were doing something that you could see the stitches, you know, you were being very brave and you were doing it nice colours and everything, then you can only do one line of stitches. You know, you can't come back to it. You've got to get it right first time. Now all those scraggly bits taken care of. I could, if it was really, really bad, go down a couple of stitches as well. So that's good. That's the pocket done. And not too scary. Just remember, we can't have it too long because it will be seen and it will be terrible. Hokey cokey. Now, buttons and buttonholes. I can't sew a buttonhole. I can't sew a button on with a sewing machine. I know you can get sewing machines that you can. I haven't got one. I don't think I'd want to try. Just not very brave. Not very brave at all. So, if you want to sew a buttonhole with the buttonhole maker, then that's great. But if you are on a straight stitch only machine, we're going to go through and we're going to make an old-fashioned type buttonhole. So I have a square of fabric here that's bigger than the buttonhole, and I'm going to line it up with the previous buttonhole because that's kind of important. Okay, I made sure that I've only got one piece of cloth under the machine. I haven't got anything tucked up, and I am right side up. Lovely, and right side down. So now that we're lined up and we've chosen our buttons so we know how big to make the buttonhole, we're basically going to sew a rectangle. Now I'm leaving the needle down every time I turn. This is so that I've got my nice sharp corners, and yeah, it's just got to be done that way. So leaving the needle down, turning again, and then joining up. So what I'm left with is almost like I've drawn a square on here. It's not any other reason than I was bored and I wanted to draw a square. Okay, so that's the first stage. It's quite simple. Just make sure your square of cloth is bigger because you're going to trim it off afterwards, so that's fine. Now I am going to fold this in half. I'm going to place my thumb there and I'm going to line it up, wiggle it about so that it's the same both sides, and I can feel the stitches so that I know that they're in the same place. Sharp crafting scissors. Yes, I know, going across the grain again, cutting fabric, but it's got to be done. Now we are cutting just a line in between our sewn square, yeah? Then with the excess fabric, and it can be this big, it's fine, we are pushing it through. Now once we've got a little bit, we can pull the rest through, it's fine. Hokey cokey. Now, as we're using the thin lining, it's not going to last for very long, this lining, as a pocket support. really what we should be using is a thicker material. But, you know, it just adds a bit of colour, and it's quite nice. So we're going to mush it. Mush it as flat as you can. Try not to pull it. And we are going to sew another rectangle. Now, because we've got a lightweight fabric and we've got those pleats and those pucks, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying not to push them away. If there's a pleat there, there is a pleat. I'm just sewing over that pleat. Now the square that we're doing now is bigger than the original square. So, you know, hopefully it's all sorted. Okie dokie. So all I've done is another square. I know, I was obsessed with squares. So that's what I've got on that side, and this is what I've got on this side. So I think they look great. It really is choice. You know, you can either, if you don't have a machine setting on here for buttonholes, or you're not happy to use that, because the problem is that you're using it at the last stage. You know, you've sewn this waistcoat, you're really happy, you love the colours, you're feeling really chuffed, and then you've got to risk something, and that's quite hard. So, you know, don't feel bad if you hand sew a buttonhole. I can completely understand it. You have to ask yourself, do you want people to know that it's custom made? Then you do, don't you? You know, it's just because it's custom made by you doesn't make it any more valuable. So yes, hand sewing the buttons on. You don't need to see me do that. You don't need to see me thread a needle because it's amusing. Alright, there we are. We have our little waistcoat with our buttonholes and our buttons to come. We have a dummy pocket and a real pocket, so that, you know, we can see why we would do that. Yeah, either you like pockets or you don't, to wear, that is. And we have the bit at the back, which is just literally a couple of flaps, but trust me, it just makes the difference. And yeah, we have these lovely double stitches here, which just make the garment lie flat and very comfortable and durable to wear. So, thank you so much for watching. I know I said that this is the easy one. This isn't necessarily the easy one. This is the, I'm doing them in stages of sewing machine type. This is the beginner's sewing machine, or the old-fashioned sewing machine. So thank you for watching. My name's Fiona from Weekly Sewing Pea. Please like, share and subscribe.